Hello guys, this is Alpha Century, and I am back with a deck tech. So this deck is one that I'm really excited about. It's using the new General Brome, and it's a Swarm Lyonar deck. I'm going to try a bit of a new format here, so I'm going to split up the deck tech part into one video, and then maybe show off a couple of games in a separate video, so look out for that. So the first thing you'll notice is that our curve, apart from Holy Immolation, stops at 3. And we're foregoing a lot of the main Lyonar staples in favor of a bunch of seemingly really weird stuff. But the deck has been working really well for me actually, and it's a lot of fun. It's something new, and it's actually a very good deck too. So let's just get right into it. So it's a very linear deck. It's not hard to play, and you basically want to do the exact same thing every time. So I've just written out the steps here of how to play the deck. So the first few turns you just want to put as many bodies down as you can. Use all the mana springs. Just play more stuff than the opponent can kill. And then whatever sticks, you want to buff it out of the range of their removal and out of the range where they can easily deal with it with their board. And then you're just going to have a huge board presence of 4/5s, 3/6s, 4/7s, very early on before they actually have the means to deal with it. And you just want to press your early advantage and try and kill them before 7 mana when a lot of the other decks' main combos come online. Obviously, the curve stopping at 3, our late game isn't going to be the best, so we want to have an early board presence, buff it up, and take them out early. So getting into the card choices, I've broken it down a bit here. So the first group of cards I've categorized as Swarm. So we've got Dreamgazer and Zix, which are both very generic, good Swarm minions. Dreamgazer obviously comes out for free. The 2 damage typically isn't very relevant because our game plan is going to be a lot faster than our opponent is going to be able to kill us, so we don't really care about our life total too much. Zix as well, just a good Swarm, and it's 1 mana, which is great. Azurite Lion, a fairly new addition to the deck, but it has been performing phenomenally. If it sticks and you're able to buff it, and you have either a 3/4 Azurite Lion or a 4/5 Azurite Lion, that gets a lot scarier. So yeah, despite not having Roar, it's still been performing very well. And finally, Sunwisp. A bit on the slower side in that it is 2 mana and doesn't really present a threatening body, but it does draw a card, which is good for when the games are going a bit longer and you need to sustain your cards. The next category we have is Golems. Essentially just more of the same low-cost swarmy minions. Obviously, they all synergize with Warblade, which is going to be one of the key cards of the deck here. So Warblade Bond, other friendly minions gain +1/+1. So if you have a Golem on the board, you're going to be able to get a buff for your whole swarm, which is fantastic. So the other 2 Golems are basically just in because A, they're cheap minions that are good to swarm with, but mostly just B, they're going to let us get the most value and the most consistent procs out of our Warblades. Right, so the last minions here is what I've called the top end, so our 3 mana minions. Aurora is absolutely fantastic for this deck. So it has 5 health, so it doesn't die to most stuff. And whenever you summon a minion with 2 or less attack, this minion gains +2 attack. So if we go back, you'll notice that every single one of our minions has 2 or less attack. And also we can trigger his ability with Brome's Bloodborne spell, which 1 mana create a 1/2 minion with Zeal or Provoke. So that's another little bit of Swarm that I did not put in here, but Brome himself also generates some Swarm. Anyway, so all of this Swarm is going to let Aurora get absolutely huge if your opponent can't answer it. So I've had games where he goes up to, say, like 20 attack, and they just spend the whole game running away from him. So if they can't remove him, he cashes in for a lot of damage. And the other top end is Sojourner, which is the card I chose as the main draw card for this deck. So obviously we need some draw because all of our cards are like 2 or 3 cost, so we burn through them pretty quickly. So Joanna sticks around, but typically its body isn't very threatening with just one attack. Our deck has enough means to really take advantage of the body, and also it's a great draw engine, so it's a really good fit for the deck. And it's cheaper than a lot of other draw as well, which is great. Now for the payoff cards. So when you think of Swarm, you think of like a Swarm Lilith with Deathfire Crescendo and Soul Grimoire. So these are kind of the equivalent cards for Swarm Lyonar. Empyreal Congregation is a new card. Give friendly minions in a 2x2 area +2/+2, which is absolutely fantastic for this deck. It's honestly the main reason why it works. So say we play like 5 minions on a turn, the opponent kills 2 of them, we then have 3 minions. We can position them in a square, play a 4th minion, play Empyreal Congregation on them. Then we essentially got 8 points worth of stats for 3 mana. Or, sorry, no, we got 16 points of stats for 3 mana, 8 points worth of attack. And then whichever minions survive from the last turn, we can use that stat buff immediately to take control of the board and push damage, etc., etc. It's like the payoff for having lots of small bodies. This is the main way we make them into big bodies. The second payoff card, just 2 of Skywind Glaives, often strictly worse than Empyreal Congregation because it just gives attack and not health. So if you're trading in with your dudes, they'll often die when you trade into them with Skywind Glaives, whereas with Empyreal Congregation they'll stick around because of the health boost. But Skywind Glaives is fantastic for finishing off the opponent. So you can often get 8 points worth of damage out of Skywind. Yeah, it's just another redundant way to take advantage of our huge number of minions on the board. And finally, the last set of cards I've just called good stuff. So these don't really have synergy with the deck, but they are just good Brome cards. So Holy Immolation, it's been a staple for Lyonar for pretty much the whole length of the game, I think, and for good reason. So in this deck, it's gonna help us push the last bit of damage sometimes, but also for the cases where we can't just ignore what our opponent is doing, the cases where they actually manage to set up some minions. Playing Holy Immolation on 5 mana is a good way to deal with the board, usually when we fall behind early. And finally, Afterblaze. So the main reason this is in the deck is because Brome's one spell has Zeal. So on 4 mana you can make a 1/2, make it into a 3/6, provoke, and it doesn't cost you a card. So this is good for the turns where we don't have a lot of Swarm in our hand and we need to take a slow turn, so it helps us refill our hand, but also presenting like a good enough body to pass the turn. Yeah, it's also good on Azurite Lion and a few other cards, and also the cases where we have Swarm on the board, but we don't have a payoff card, and we're just waiting to get a payoff card. You know, make a 3/6, maybe you'll find your payoff card. That's the deck. So look, as I say, look out for the second video where I will be playing some games with it. It's been a lot of fun. You win surprisingly often. I can talk a bit about the matchups really quickly. So the matchups you win are the ones that don't really have fantastic ways to cope with the early pressure. Aggro Abyssian, or just basically the Abyssian that plays Desolator on curve over and over. You can just ignore their Desolators and develop a huge board and kill them quickly. Firestorm Mantra also is a good matchup for the deck, because if they don't have the perfect answers, like 8 gates, Ghost Lightning, Twin Strike, if they don't have the perfect combo, they're not going to be able to take out all your minions, and you should be able to kill them a lot faster than they go off with Mantra. Bad matchups, the only matchup I would say is really bad is your Magmar that plays Plasma Storm and Lava Slasher and Macantor. Those 3 cards are in combination are really hard for the deck to deal with. Other than that, everything's fairly winnable. As I say, it's fairly easy to pick up and play. The skill comes from knowing what cards your opponent is running and how to play around them. Uh, Obviously, there's a lot of potential for having high roll hands where you just go off in the first few turns and present an unbeatable board before the opponent has a chance to set up. In the games where you don't get that, that also requires a bit more skill making it work. I find I am able to, even if I have a slow start, keep the board even, and then there'll be a point where you can dump a bunch of swarm and buff it up in the same turn, and typically that can be enough to push you through and get the win. Right, so this has been Alpha Century. This is my Brome Swarm deck, and I'll see you in the next video for some games.